You're going to start off by sticking your stick and stitch pattern into the centre of your garment. Next up, you're going to use chain stitch for the letter or for the name. Pop the needle through the garment and left a little tail of yarn that we'll thread through when we're done. Now for chain stitch, I've created a single stitch and I've hooked the yarn over that stitch. And then you're going to pop the needle through the same hole, bring it up a stitch length ahead and hook that yarn over again. I'm holding the yarn to one side with my non-needle hand. That just makes it much easier to hook that little loop over, creating a link in your chain. So hold the yarn to one side, needle up and through the same hole, bring that yarn over the needle, up and through the same hole, stitch length ahead, hook that little loop over. And you're going to continue doing this, following the outline of the name or the letter on your stick and stitch pattern. And then with those last few stitches, as I come to the end of my letter, as you can see, I'm just moving the garment as I go, ensuring that I'm always stitching away from me. It's just that's my preferred method to do chain stitch. And then pop the needle through the fabric once you've finished to anchor that last stitch in place. And then with the leftover yarn, I'm just simply bringing it back down through simple straight stitches through the reverse of the garment. You can see the little bits of stitch coming through from the chain stitch. So I'd say 6 or 7 times, and then cut off any excess, and that will keep your stitches in place and stop it unravelling. And you're just going to continue this chain stitch process, following the lines either of the name or the letter that you've chosen to add to your kit. Now here I'm going to show you what to do, and we've got 2 letters that don't join up. So the I and the D we're going to have to do as 2 separate letters. So I'm just completing my chain stitch, bringing the needle through the same hole, a stitch length ahead and hooking the yarn over. And I'm going to stop there. I'm going to leave that little tail of yarn and we're going to come back to it once we've finished the letter D. So then I'm doing the last letter. Again, just following the lines on the stick and stitch template, bringing the needle down through the same hole, stitch length ahead, and by holding the yarn to one side with my thumb, I feel that creates really nice, neat stitches and helps to keep the same tension through all the stitches as well. We're just finishing up and coming to the end of the final letter in the name. And all you're going to do is pop the yarn and the needle through the fabric to anchor that last stitch in place. And we're going to do the same as we have done before to get rid of any remnant yarn. So we're just looking for the stitches that have come through the reverse of the fabric And we're just weaving the excess yarn through those stitches. And then when we've got 2 pieces of yarn side by side like this, I've weaved one piece of yarn to get to the other, and I've tied the 2 together in a little knot, and we'll cut off the excess. And now going back to join up the letters, I've taken that piece of yarn that was left from the letter I, and I've just weaved it through the centre of the chain in the next letter. For the letter I, we're doing a little French knot, so wrapping the yarn around the needle 3 times and popping it back through the fabric like this. For the leaves, we're going to do fishbone stitch. So you're going to bring the yarn through the tip of the leaf, leaving a little tail here, and you're going to bring it down that vertical line 1 single stitch, just following the slightly darker line on your stick and stitch template. There we go. And then we're going to bring the yarn following the outline of the leaf through the bottom of the leaf, and then down through that middle line to the bottom of where your first stitch was, and then the yarn through the top of the leaf, down through the middle line, through the bottom and through the middle line. This creates a little fishbone effect, but you want to make sure that each stitch is as close as it can be to the previous stitch. And you've got kind of little arrows on the leaf on your stick and stitch pattern. I just make sure that the yarn, we're following the direction of the little lines on the leaf. You just continue this process following the outline of the leaf and popping the needle through that central line of the leaf until the whole of the shape is filled. We've just got the last few little stitches to do. We could probably fit a couple more in here. And then the needle up through the last time, following that outline of the leaf and down through the bottom. And that's your leaf done. And then to tie the leaf off, what we're doing is we're threading the yarn through the leaf, just like this, bringing it back to that first little piece of yarn. Then I'm just tying the 2 off together in a little knot, make sure it's nice and tight, and then just cutting off any excess yarn. And then we're going to repeat exactly the same process with the darker green yarn. So bring the yarn through the fabric, leaving a little tail again, and bring it down 1 stitch length, the central line of the leaf. Then bringing the needle through the one side of the leaf, then you're going to poke it down through the middle, through the other side, and down through the middle. And again, exactly the same process as we did do with the previous leaf, but in a different colour, until the whole of the shape has been filled. Just making sure each time you bring the needle through, you bring it as close as you can to the previous stitch, so you can't see any of the fabric coming through at all. And again, we're going to tie it off exactly the same way that we did before. So just thread that yarn, weave it through the inside of your garment, through the stitches, and tie it off with a little piece of yarn from when you started the leaf. and then cutting off any excess. And you're just going to repeat this process until all the leaves on your stick and stitch pattern are done. Now for the bee, we're going to use satin stitch. So again, I've left that little tail of yarn when bringing the needle through. You're bringing the needle through the bottom of the shape and then inserting it into the top of the bee, just like this. So through the bottom and then through the top, through the bottom and then through the top, with individual straight stitches, making sure that each stitch is running completely parallel to the one previous. You're just going to do this until the whole body of the bee is filled. And that last stitch, and you're going to tie off the start and the end bits of yarn exactly the same way we did with the leaves. So threading that yarn through the reverse of the stitch in the inside of the garment and tying the start and end piece of yarn together just like that, and then just cutting off any excess. Little black stripes on the bee, you're going to take the thin black yarn from your embroidery pack and you're going to add little individual stitches, but this time the stitches aren't going to touch because you want some of the yellow to come through. So just 3 or 4 little straight stitches going over the yellow we used for the body of the bee. And then lazy daisy stitch for the bees. So bring the needle up through the base of the wing. And then you're going to pop the needle through exactly the same hole. Pulling that yarn, but leaving a little loop. Needle up through the top of the wing, hooking the loop over, pulling it tight, and then anchoring that little wing in place. So needle through the base of the wing, popping the needle down through the same hole, and then I'm bringing it up through the top of the wing, hooking that yarn over in a little loop, pulling the yarn tight, and then poking the needle through to the outer edge of the wing, just to anchor it into place, just like that. Then you'll tie off the same as we've done previously. Now for the outline of the mushroom, we're going to use stem stitch, which creates a lovely rope-like effect. So bring the needle through, following the outline of the mushroom, bring it down a stitch length ahead, creating a little loop, but I'm just holding to the side. Bring the needle through the middle of your last stitch and poking it down a stitch length ahead. Pulling it to leave a loop and then bringing the needle through the middle of the last stitch. Bringing and making a little loop, holding the loop to the side with the non-needle hand and then stitch through the middle of the last stitch. And you need to make sure that you always hold the yarn the same way. So for me, always holding it to the left with my non-needle hand. Little loop, needle through the middle of the last stitch and bring it tight. Just moving my garment around as I do this. So pulling it down, little loop, hold to the side, needle through the middle of the last stitch and pull it tight like this. And you're just going to continue doing this same stitch until you come back to where you started. So create that little loop, hold to the side, needle through the middle of the last stitch, just like this. Pull that little loop tight and then pop the needle back through the fabric, and you've finished the outline of your mushroom. Next up, to fill the mushroom, we're going to use a series of long and short stitches. So just stitches of varying length. Poke the needle through the fabric, down a stitch length ahead, all different lengths to create a lovely textured feel. And you want to leave gaps where the little dots of the mushrooms are going to be for you to fill those in after. So bring the needle through the fabric, stitch length ahead, varying lengths. What I do like to make sure of is that all the stitches are in the same direction. So each of these stitches is going to be vertical, but just a series of long, then short, leaving little gaps where you want the little dots of the mushroom to be. Just continue this process. As you can see, I'm leaving little gaps for the dots, making sure that you're quite sporadic with where the needle is coming in and out, just to create a really seamless textured effect. You don't want the stitches to kind of look like they're in lines and kind of going in and out in the same place. So just those last few stitches until the whole body of the mushroom has been filled. Just like that. Then we're going to tie off the start and the end exactly the same way we've done for the others. So thread that end of yarn back to the bit of yarn where you started, tie a little knot, and then I just cut that off with scissors. And then for the spots, I'm using a thinner regular weight white yarn, and we're just doing satin stitch, the same as we did for the body of the bees. So just bringing the white through the bottom of the little spot and then up through the top. Just a series of short, straight stitches until the whole little spot on the mushroom has been filled. And you're just going to then, once you've completed that one, move on to the next one. And you're going to continue this going in one side of the shape, down through the other. Probably take 6 or 7 little individual straight stitches until that spot on the mushroom has been filled. And you want to repeat this process across the whole mushroom. Finally, we're going to do satin stitch again in a lovely beige yarn. This is a chunky yarn for the little stalk of the mushroom. So we're doing horizontal stripes here, bringing the yarn through the one side of the shape and down through the other, making sure every stitch is touching the previous stitch, just following the outline of the stalk of the mushroom. And you just continue doing this, a series of individual straight stitches until the whole shape has been filled. And then finally, to get rid of the transfer paper, I just pop it on a cold wool wash and it completely dissolves with water. And there you have it.